Australian Open in the books, Mike. You're behind the tennis courts right now to recap the Happy Slam, first major of the season, officially done as we're kind of well underway for the tennis calendar in 2026.
It's a great first 2 weeks of major tennis action, and to recap it, I'm really happy to have a nice looking and proper tennis background this week as I'm at 10XTO here in Toronto by Lake Ontario, filming above two of their four premier indoor tennis courts. And both of us, Ben, have had the chance to hit here before. It's a fantastic place. They've been a former sponsor of ours and currently still a big supporter of the work we do here surrounding Canadian tennis. So my thanks to Matt Black and Jordan Sadowski and their team for having me tonight. A great spot to catch up on the Aussie Open tennis. And, we had perhaps a surprise finals on the men's side. One of the two that we predicted to be there. Most people thought it was going to be a 1 versus 2 Alcaraz versus Sinner, but old man Novak Djokovic had something to say about that. And then on the women's side, of course, Aryna Sabalenka making a 4th straight final in Melbourne, but upset, I guess you could say, by Elena Rybakina.
Hey, we'll get to that upset, which you called. Kudos to you for predicting that right. If we start on the men's side, yes, not the final we had penciled in. I think a lot of us, you and I included, were expecting an Alcaraz-Sinner showdown and a continuation of that rivalry. And Novak Djokovic had other plans. And kudos to the legend, who's 38 and a half years old and reaching another Grand Slam final. Just unbelievable. But the weekend Sunday belonged to Carlos Alcaraz and officially completing the career Golden Slam by claiming his first Australian Open, defeating Novak Djokovic in 4 sets. Youngest man in the Open era to accomplish the Golden Slam, win all 4 at just 22 years old. Unbelievable what this guy is doing in this sport. He's now at 7 Grand Slams overall, and just a sense of that type of company. Already he's tied with John McEnroe. He's tied with Mats Wilander. He's surpassed Boris Becker. He's surpassed Stefan Edberg. And I feel like we're going to see more and more of this for years to come. This is, I think, one of the greatest athletes on the planet right now.
I'm really having trouble processing the fact that he's already surpassed 2 of my childhood idols in Boris Becker and Stefan Edberg, and just how quickly he's been able to do it, and how 7 slams today really is it's nothing compared to what it was back in the day. McEnroe and Wilander were considered 2 of the greats when I was a child growing up. And they're still considered in that company for sure. But when you have athletes like Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer surpassing 20, you've got Alcaraz now on pace for, my math isn't great, but I wonder what he's on pace for if he carries this up to the age of 38 like Djokovic has done. And so it's just so impressive. And, I don't think it takes away truthfully from the accomplishments of what happened in the past. It was a more wide open time. There was a lot more sharing of the majors going on. I guess you could say in some ways it was more competitive amongst the men at that time because there were more of them vying for these top titles. But we are in an era already now, a post Big 3 era, almost heading into a new Big 2 era of Sinner and Alcaraz, who've dominated so much. And it had to take someone like Novak Djokovic to crash the party and take one of them out, who's still at his age, if he's healthy, and he had some luck. We could talk about that in a moment in terms of the opponents he had, and a little bit of a rest and shorter matches heading into that semifinal match against Sinner, which clearly helped him. But he still went out there and beat a much younger opponent, and an opponent who's been absolutely on fire at the majors over the last 2 years.
Yeah, look. Novak Djokovic's path, I think, to the final, apart from the semifinal, was quite unusual, without a doubt. Maybe not the first couple of matches. He defeated a qualifier early on. He beat Botic van de Zandschulp, which was a nice win. It's funny, when we first spoke leading into this tournament, I had circled that possible matchup of Jakub Mensik and Novak Djokovic, thinking this could possibly be trouble because for those who recall, Mensik beat him in the finals of Miami last year, had that big game, powerful serve, great baseline skills. I felt like this could be danger here for Novak, and Mensik gets injured and pulls out before the match happens. Then you shift over to the quarterfinals, and Novak just didn't really look himself. He was not sharp at all, making a lot of unforced errors. His timing was off, and Lorenzo Musetti was playing brilliantly, built up a 2-love sets lead, and suddenly a groin injury at the worst possible time. And you have to feel for the Italian. He looked like he was on the verge of the semifinals. Novak even admitted post-match, I was probably on my way out. And look, you don't give legends a second chance because what Djokovic produced in that semifinal, just a mesmerizing performance, really beating arguably, for me, maybe Carlos Alcaraz. He's the best player in the world, but I would call Jannik Sinner overall, obviously maybe stronger stats-wise on a hard court, and he was the two-time defending champion, and Djokovic delivered a world-class performance, beats him in 5 sets. So tough in clutch moments, saved 16 of 18 break points in that match.
That's incredible stuff right there.
It's unbelievable. It was reminiscent of a few wins he had over, Roger in the 2010s, where he was so mentally tough and maybe lost more points in the match, but won the key points and delivered in the key moments and gets through in 5. And look, I thought despite losing in 4 to Carlos Alcaraz, he had a great showing in that final. He came out guns blazing in that first set, hitting so hard, hitting really clean. Alcaraz had to change something, and he did, and Alcaraz just has every shot in his toolbox. He's the best mover on the tour. That drop shot, he's so complete at this stage. When he's in flight, I just don't know who can stop him.
Well, we're going to see as the season progresses what he, where he goes from here. Does he take the upper hand this year against Sinner and consolidate and add to his 7 majors? How does Sinner bounce back from this? What does he have to say? The two are probably going to play a ton of times this season and on multiple surfaces. Alcaraz already, just to me, it's so incredible how he has, you almost want to use the word mastered all of the surfaces. It doesn't make a difference whether it's hard court, clay, or grass, that he's getting those victories, and it doesn't seem to matter where. Surface selection seems far less important today, and specific surface to surface than it did back in the 1980s and 1990s and early 2000s. I felt, and I don't know about you, that the Djokovic Alcaraz final was a little bit more compelling for me than the Sinner Alcaraz final that we expected. And that's no disrespect to Sinner whatsoever. And it's been incredible the last 2 years what these two young guys have done. Yep. But it seemed to be so expected and predictable that it would be those two once again in the finals here, that it was cool to see someone else in the mix and somebody who had so much on the line. You had the young guy going for already the career slam versus the aging veteran who, it's amazing. He's going to be 39 this year, who was going for number 25, his 25th major singles title. So I found the narrative going in was a little bit more exciting. And let's be honest, whether you're a fan of Novak Djokovic or you aren't, we are appreciating probably the last year or so of a great champion who at some point is going to have to hang up the racket. And following the loss, he admitted, I can't say that I'll be back for one more. I can't say see you next year. Who knows what his body and who knows mentally what he'll be up for following this 2026 season.
No, exactly. That was certainly my takeaway. I think in the post-match ceremony, he is kind of reflective, wondering, was this my last Australian Open? And I will say this, he's a 10-time champion in Melbourne. For so many years, he was kind of almost playing in the shadow of Federer and Nadal. He was not the beloved champion that those two were, and surpassed both of them. I really felt this time around in Australia, past editions, you felt obviously the crowd was so behind Roger. They were so behind Rafa. They were so behind some other champions. Novak really got his flowers this year, and it was very well deserved. I think the fans were electrified to see someone of his age and stature beating Jannik Sinner in that semifinals, and he got a tremendous level of support in that final, and he deserves it. I would say arguably maybe a little too little too late, but now it's come, and I sense the appreciation for a champion of his status has risen over the past couple of years, which is nice to see.
Listen, anyone who's close in age to me and is still a professional athlete, let alone a professional athlete contending for big titles like this, deserve respect on some level for sure. And I think the crowd, with Federer and Nadal now retired, there are some people who were softening to Djokovic. They didn't like it as much when he came along and started contending with that rivalry that was gripping the tennis world from 2004 to 2006, 2007. And they didn't like that competition. And I get it, because I was one of them at the time, fully entrenched in the Federer corner, just as you were in Nadal's. So for Djokovic now to get a little bit of that appreciation for what he's able to do on court, what he's accomplished on court, I think is deserved. He was flirting with disaster a little bit there in one of his earlier matches with that whack of the ball that came a little bit close to the ball kid. Yeah, and that could have totally changed that narrative and derailed his improbable, perhaps, run to the finals. So let's not forget about that. And it wouldn't have been the first time either. But you can tell how fired up he gets, and other players as well in moments like that. But a good reminder that you got to be careful what you're doing out there with your racket at all times.
No kidding. We mentioned Roger and Rafa. I mean, how unusual, cool, really. Rafa's in attendance, just a couple rows up behind the court. Probably kind of a surreal scenario, you have to think, for Novak Djokovic, where you have your greatest rival above watching you. Those two played 60 times. I mean, for me, that will forever be the most compelling rivalry in tennis. And, Novak kind of acknowledged, it was great that he acknowledged Nadal in that post-match ceremony. It was special to have his greatest rival ever, of course, of Spanish descent, and probably in part rooting for Carlos Alcaraz because of their Spanish connection. But he still remains appreciative for Novak pushing on. And just having Rafa in the crowd watching Novak Djokovic, that to me is also just a sign that yes, the end is coming up, I think, pretty quickly. That, look, I made the prediction last year. I felt like 2025 was going to be the final year for Novak. Maybe I won't say it now that 2026 will be the final year, but it's getting very close.
I still want to see more of this Alcaraz-Djokovic rivalry continue a little bit. And you know what? If it's a best of three, I think Djokovic is still going to have a shot at these matches.
Yeah, I mean,
even best of five, he certainly got his fans' hopes up after taking that first set and starting strongly in the second. You go back to 2023 when Djokovic won 3 of the 4 majors, was number one, fully entrenched. Sinner and Alcaraz had not yet taken that next step up to the level that we see them at now. And in 2024, we were so excited to see what Djokovic and Alcaraz might look like when they finally got to playing each other. And the matches didn't disappoint. They had some epic matches against one another. And then last year, not as much. Djokovic wasn't playing as regularly, was trying to peak really for the slams and not put as much into the Masters 1000 events. But I'd still like to see these two go at it. What are they, 5-5 now? Am I correct on that one? I'm just off the top of my head,
right. Yeah,
I think they're all even. And regardless, it's they've had some pretty incredible ones, and it's got a short shelf life. This rivalry is not going to have much, and truthfully, how rare it is to see greats from different generations get to play each other on multiple occasions. Federer-Sampras, we only got that one time. Federer-Agassi, we got a few more of those because Andre was able to prolong his career a little bit longer. But you could already tell that Agassi was sort of on the downward spiral there towards the end. But Djokovic and Alcaraz, we've had some pretty good ones in the last couple of years, and I hope we get a couple more before Djokovic does hang up the racket.
They play amazing matches against one another. Obviously, the iconic 5-set Wimbledon final, I think, was their best, but 3 hours 40. I remember they played in the final in Cincinnati ahead of the U.S. Open, was an insane match. They've played some classics. It's a shame Federer never got to play Alcaraz, because Alcaraz did play a few matches against Rafa, a couple great ones. Sinner and Rafa played. I don't know if Sinner played Federer either. So
I can't recall. How do you think Federer and Alcaraz would have matched up? I mean, Federer already had such a great rivalry with another Spaniard, the legendary Rafa Nadal. How do you think Alcaraz's game against a healthy Federer would have, and maybe even younger Federer would have translated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're talking about peak Roger. Why not? I think the dynamic would be a bit similar to the rivalry that Rafa and Roger did share in their primes, where you would feel like, Carlos with that court coverage and the variety and all the things he can do with the ball would probably have the edge on a clay court. Roger Peak on grass versus Alcaraz on grass. Now that I would pay good money to see, because I really couldn't tell you. Roger for a long stretch there looked completely unbeatable at the All England Club. It's easy to forget. So how would Carlos measure to that? I'm not sure.
Well, we've seen a bunch of exhibitions in the past between retired players, recently retired players, and current players. I remember Pete Sampras playing against Milos Raonic at the Air Canada Centre, now Scotiabank Arena here in Toronto. I don't know if you went to that one or not, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility that Alcaraz could play an exhibition against Federer. I know Roger and Rafa want to play some exhibition matches, so hopefully we get to see some of those, but that would be kind of cool. The funny thing about that question is, we all know what peak Federer was like, but we don't know yet what peak Alcaraz is like because he's only 22 years old. And when the question gets posed, on the scale of greatness, where does Alcaraz rank? I mean, I think it's impossible to answer that yet because we just don't know how much he's going to continue to evolve. And Djokovic mentioned in his press conference afterwards that he was just so impressed with the fact that that Alcaraz is constantly innovating and improving and looking to get better even at the age of 22 already. So, will he continue at this rate? Will other prodigies come along and spoil the party between Sinner and Alcaraz? Who knows? Mm-hmm. Will he be able to stay healthy? And then, I always think to Bjorn Borg, who walked away from tennis at the age of 26. Not that I see that happening with Alcaraz, but you just never know when someone's going to say, hey, enough's enough, whether it's 26 or Pete Sampras at 31. Not everyone goes to the age of 39 like Novak Djokovic, still being a contender.
No kidding. I want to give a shout out to one other legend. I mean, we did talk about him a little bit at the front end of the Australian Open. Stan Wawrinka, age 40, playing his last season to make the third round and have the showing that he had was unbelievable. He won a 5-set thriller in his second round match against Arthur Gia of France, and he pushed Taylor Fritz on Rod Laver Arena as well to 4 sets. Stan will be playing again this week in Montpellier. He's getting his ranking back up. I mean, what a beautiful era of tennis that is going to be coming to an end soon. But I'm glad Stan had such a memorable, unbelievable goodbye as well in Melbourne.
I'm going to be cheering for Stan Wawrinka all season long for sure, along with Gael Monfils, two hugely entertaining players of that era. And Wawrinka, who I think got way more than we thought he would probably get out of his career in terms of winning those 3 slams. And it's no disrespect to him and his super talent and the game that he has, but it's just the fact that he played in the era of, the big 3, even the big 4, because Andy Murray was busy winning slams for a while there too, and world number 1. So the fact that he got 3 of them, incredible stuff. And I think if we look at Gael Monfils, maybe one of the most talented players on the men's side to never win a slam, and someone who would have been predicted to win one back when he was a junior number 1. So much skill, so much talent, so much showmanship, maybe too much showmanship took away from his ability to win that major. But nonetheless, 2 players that I think most tennis fans will look back on with fond memories and appreciation for both of their games, differing games, but what they brought to the table and how they brought men's tennis to pretty entertaining levels for many years.
A quick check-in on Canadians in Melbourne, the Canadian men, and obviously the number one disappointment was our top-ranked Canadian, Felix Auger-Aliassime. I had high hopes he could, at least get himself maybe to the round of 16, possibly play Daniil Medvedev, learner T, and really shook that up, upset Medvedev, in fact. And Felix, his body let him down, cramping against Portugal's Nuno Borges in the first round. And it's problematic when Felix, as talented and great of a player he is unreliable in Grand Slams. And the U.S. Open, as great as that was, a semifinals run, it's now been consecutive years of disappointment in Melbourne. And we have to see the confidence return. We have to see more results at Masters 1000s and at majors.
But what do you say when it's cramping? It's not that he went out there and laid an egg. It's not that he went out there and didn't bring his best. It's the fact that his body wouldn't allow him to do what we hope to see from him. I mean, do we give a pass on that? Do we say it's poor conditioning? Do we say it's bad luck? I just don't feel that we can throw that in to the previous disappointments, which I think, fairly enough, we've been critical of in the past of both him and Denis Shapovalov and anyone really who's truly seeded and meant to be able to go further at some of these slams, especially on a hard court. I just don't know if we can slot this in to the same level of disappointment that we've seen in the recent years.
You're right. Maybe I would characterize it more in the sense the way Felix characterized it. It seemed like he was just incredibly frustrated that his body could have cramped. He said, there were plenty of the questions asked, like, did you have any issues with your preparation in terms of United Cup, and were you ready? And he said, like he had prepared for more than a week after United Cup. He was feeling great. He'd done all the right things, and this happened. And it just kind of makes you scratch your head that he would have cramping issues at this stage in his career at age 25. I know it obviously gets hot in Melbourne. It's not his first time playing Melbourne, so I don't know if I want to give him a free pass. I feel bad. Let's just frame it that way. And I think he's more frustrated than anybody. So there's a reason he took a wild card to play Montpellier this week. He's probably ticked off about this Australian Open result, and he wants some matches and he wants to start winning.
Yeah, and Montpellier is going to that's an indoor one, correct? So that really works to his strengths, knowing how successful he's been in indoor tournaments in recent history, and really his whole career. That's been the absolute best place for him to contend for titles. I mean, if he had a slam at an indoor facility, although you can argue that Melbourne, of course, has the roof that is closed at some points in time, but if there was a true indoor slam, you'd put him up there in top contenders for sure. It's tough because he's at that age where he's still quite young, but he's not as young as he used to be. And I wonder if he's, thinking at this stage already of how many years of opportunities will I have to contend at these majors. And 25, he's still got many years ahead of him. I'm not trying to get overly dramatic here, but I do think it creeps into your mind as you get out of those early years of your career where you don't give it any thought whatsoever because you just assume that you're going to play forever. I mean, just like when we're in our early 20s, we think we're going to live forever and you're going to be in your 20s for the rest of your life. I just wonder if he's at that stage now too, where there's a little added pressure and probably a little added disappointment when things don't work out because of the fact that he's entering the kind of mid phase of his career and really some prime years when you think about it, 24, 25, 26, where you have that talent and your body should be at its peak and you want to get more out of it, of course.
Yeah, look, and he's not the only one. I'm sure there are a number of guys who are kind of in that space, maybe feeling that way if they don't kind of step up now, are they ever going to get their moment? And I look at the rankings and think of Andrei Rublev, who's 28 years old now and kind of hanging into a top 15 spot in the rankings. Casper Ruud, who maybe you could argue overachieved making the Grand Slam finals that he did, and he's number 13 there. And then you have, the hungry names just below Felix. I mean, Ben Shelton is lurking right there. He's 2 years younger, and we're seeing kind of a steady ascension every season. And he's been very reliable in Grand Slams, again, making quarters here before losing to Jannik Sinner. Novak had a great line in his press conference. If you don't progress, you regress. So it's going to be tough for Felix to kind of fend off everybody who's chasing and kind of stay ahead of the pack and keep his top 10 spot.
Well, hopefully he has a successful time in Montpellier and shakes things off and gets back to business. We should probably continue our business here with the women's event, and what an exciting one it was, of course, and very rare that a prediction, that's outside of the norm, because it would have been so easy to say Sabalenka on the women's side, just like it was easy to go with Sinner or Alcaraz on the men's side. But I truly felt that Elena Rybakina was trending upwards in 2025. I felt like she had a lot to prove. I said this on our preview episode. I feel like she hasn't been around as much in the last couple of years and playing at the high level that we know she can play at. And I think it really shows just how mental distractions and your own mental health, if it's not clicking and if you don't prioritize and if you're not able to take care of that side of your life in the same way you do your physical health, it can for sure keep you from being at your best out there. And so happy for her to make her first slam final in 3 years, win only her second career major after Wimbledon in 2022. And I don't know about you, but I think it really reminds us what she's capable of doing when she's emotionally and mentally at her peak and at her best. And I think it's great to have her at the top, back at the top of the women's game, along with Sabalenka, Swiatek, Coco Gauff, and a couple of others in there. It really makes it that much more exciting to have her as a legitimate threat when going into these major tournaments.
Look, she's always had a remarkably calm demeanor on court, winning or losing. But I felt for probably over half a year, at least a year-long stretch from 2024 leaking into 2025, she did not look herself off the court. In press conferences, she felt uneasy, she felt distrusting, and she really clashed with the WTA. And they really had a long dispute over Stefan Vukov leaving her coaching team and dealing with a suspension. And her tennis suffered for that as well in 2025. She was distracted without a doubt. It leaked into her professional results. And something certainly changed and clicked, I think, by summertime last year. And I look at her results. Even she did play great in Montreal, but post US Open, she's gone 23-3 with 3 titles. 2 of those 3 titles being a major title here in Melbourne, the second of her career, and of course the WTA finals to end the season, which was an unbelievable win considering the players she beat in succession, and didn't lose a match there, beat all the best players in the world, as we know from the season, and again delivering on the big stage here. We get a rematch of 3 years ago when Rybakina and Sabalenka played an unbelievable final. It was another great final, and Rybakina was up against it in that third set. She was down 3-love, and wow, did she ever catch fire. And her aggressive baseline game, the serving bailed her out of some tough spots. She won 5 games in a row to finish it out. And Sabalenka gave her all the credit in the world after this match, saying she simply got outplayed. Elena was too good. And kudos to her. I've always felt she was deserving of getting another major title, and it feels like she's going to be a contender for more going forward.
And winning a major is obviously terrific, but also winning a major against the world number one and 2 players, taking them both out in Sabalenka and Swiatek. Really impressive stuff. And how about Aryna Sabalenka? 4 straight finals in Melbourne. And her consistency at the slams has just been incredible, that in 11 of her last 12 slams, she's made the semifinals or better.
Amazing.
In 11 of her 12 last slams. And the one of the 12 that she didn't make the semis was a quarterfinal appearance, which is still something that most players would say, you know what, I'll take that any day of the week. So that consistency is really incredible. She's taken her game over the last 2-3 years to levels that we all hoped that she could get to. And then we all thought she could get to with the physical attributes and power that she possesses. And we talked about it recently, how she got over those serving yips back in 2022. Yep. And look what she's been able to do. I mean, any Grand Slam, any surface, you can bank on her to be in the Final Four. And I think many more titles and trophies surely to come her way.
Certainly. She's always putting herself in contention, and I'll give her credit for this. We remember last year that loss to Coco Gauff in the French Open final, and the way that match played out. Incredibly windy conditions, Gauff playing some unbelievable defense, and Sabalenka kind of losing control, as it were, on the court and hitting a ton of unforced errors, and gave what I think we could characterize as a pretty unprofessional press conference in that loss. And I think she's kind of learned from that, because this time around was completely different. She had nothing but praise for her opponent. She stood up and faced the music. There was no violent racket smashes and whatnot. I think she's matured in that sense. And look, she's going to put herself, as you said with that stat, 11 of the last 12, she's in the semifinals or better. She's going to position herself to win more majors, I think, for the next 5 to 7 years. And I think she's a contender at the next three. She's proven it at Roland Garros, making the finals there last year. I think Wimbledon, she could win. She's been into the semifinals there 3 times. There's no reason she couldn't get over the hump there. And I think she'll be the favorite when we get to the U.S. Open at the tail end of the summer.
And how about adding her to a mix of, I alluded to it a few moments ago, but I just wanted to share this stat as well that I saw online today, that for the first time since 2009, there's 6 players on the women's tour that have over 6,000 ranking points between Sabalenka, Swiatek, Rybakina, Amanda Anisimova, Coco Gauff, and Jessica Pegula. And that just shows, my goodness, there's so much strength and depth and talent at the top of the women's game. I love it. It just makes it even more compelling now with the results that we've seen here in Melbourne. And to see, shout out to a couple of those Americans, Jessie Pegula, who I think you had higher expectations and hopes for her coming in. And I thought, I didn't think that she was maybe trending in this direction, given how things were last year, where she kind of took a bit of a dip down from the consistency we saw from her in 2024. So great showing from her. And also a non-American that I want to mention, and someone that we've always mentioned on the podcast as being one of the most talented women without a slam, and that's Alina Svitolina, who really had a terrific tournament as well, and showing that she is still top 10 material for sure.
She's been so solid and so consistent. What a great start to the year for her, winning a title and then making semis here is amazing. Yeah, you highlighted, I think, a key element to the women's game right now. I felt like the word parity was thrown around almost as a complaint for women's tennis in the past by some. It's like, well, any random player could win at any given time. We have parity. It's very top heavy. Like the top 6, as you said, in the women's game, it's loaded. And any of these 6 players, I think, can win slams. And then you have the others knocking at the door who could conceivably win a slam. I mean, Madison Keys has dropped to 15. Naomi Osaka has won them before. She's within the top 15. You mentioned Svitolina. We have Bencic there. This is a really strong group of players right now. It's a fierce women's game right now, and I'm loving it, to be honest.
And how about number 13 now, Vicky Mboko, Canadian Vicky Mboko from Burlington, who played in her first main draw, Aussie Open, made it to the 4th round, took out a higher seed in Clara Towson in the 3rd round, and then fell to eventual finalist and world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka. There's definitely no shame in that. What did you see from the Canadian in her first main draw in Melbourne that bodes well for her moving forward this season?
Well, first of all, how thorough and clinical I think she was in the first couple of matches. It's a one thing to be the favorite. It's another thing to deliver and not maybe succumb to some pressure. Your first Australian Open, you're arriving there as a seeded player. Everybody knows your name now. Everybody knows your game. As much as she was a newcomer last year, people have found out, the tour has found out about Victoria Mboko and her strengths. So that alludes itself to added pressure because there are scouting reports and players know what to expect and can design a game plan. So for her to brush that aside so confidently, her first 2 matches, she beat the Australian Emerson Jones handily 4-1 and rolled past Katie McNally as well in straight sets 4-3. Resiliency against Towson, that probably should have been a straight sets win. She had a few match points in the second set, didn't take them. And Towson's a really talented player, as we know, great ball striker. So to come through in 3 sets was really impressive. And then I think she showed herself very well against Aryna Sabalenka, considering this match could have been a wash. Aryna was ahead 6-1, 4-1. She was coasting along, and Mboko kind of turned up the dial in that second set, particularly late in the second set. She scorched a few forehand returns. She saved multiple match points to get it to a tiebreak. And I think she really left an impression on Sabalenka, who knew she was a good player, but she walked away calling her an incredible player and someone who's going to be a player to watch for the next few years. So great showing for Mboko. That sets her up for, I think, a really good 2026.
Yeah, she could have rolled over being down the way she was there in that second set, but showed incredible resiliency to fight back into the match, to make adjustments, to learn on the fly against the greatest player out there right now in the women's field. And I think that bodes well for her moving forward, that she's not just going to let a match slip away without a fight. And I think you made a good point there that, other players are starting to learn more about her now, that she's not going to fly under the radar and surprise anybody as she did at the National Bank Open last summer in Montreal. People couldn't go back and really find her matches, I'm sure, from the ITF level to do much scouting. But now there's so much out there, and she's not going to be able to surprise anybody. But I think she's ready for that. I think she's got the game that can contend with these top 20 women in the world. And she's also got a great stretch of season right now where she can just bank points and add points to even rank, even bring that ranking up higher. It's going to be very interesting to see what she can do. But I feel like a top 10 for Vicky this season before Wimbledon is not going to be that hard for her to accomplish, to be perfectly honest, given the fact that anything she gains is going to have a big impact on that position for her.
Absolutely. A lot of it's going to be brand new. She's going to be ready. I mean, she was a wild card going to Miami last year. She's going to be seated at both Indian Wells and Miami this year, which is a complete game changer, where she's one of the players to watch at a WTA 1000. We're talking about a player who is outside the top 300 to start 2025. It's unbelievable. I want to talk about this one thing that happened as well in regards to Coco Gauff on the women's side. Look, she suffered a tough loss. She was not playing her best tennis. We know that. And I think she wanted to kind of step away and get some of this negative energy out. I mean, she kind of got hit off the court by Svitolina in sort of an error-strewn loss in that quarterfinal. She leaves and exits the arena. She goes off. It's not in the locker room, but just an area away from all players and personnel, and unloads on a racket and smashes it. Little does she know, video cameras are just following you everywhere. And that's kind of the reality of when you're playing at a Grand Slam event, particularly in Melbourne. They seem to have cameras in every corner of every room outside of the locker. And I didn't really understand such a negative reaction to a player smashing a racket away from the court, away from fans, away from anyone else. It felt like a private moment that was unfortunately watched by millions.
Well, don't you feel that the women's tour gets so much unnecessary flack and criticism at times from people that are just like, honestly, such a bunch of losers? There's no other way to say it, because, if that was one of the men who did that, I don't even know if that would get any headlines whatsoever. So why does it have to be that way when it's a female tennis player? I mean, have at it. Break the racket. It shows me that you care. It shows me that you're fired up. It shows me that you're very disappointed by the result that just transpired on the court, that you were hoping for more. I got absolutely no problem with that. It shows that you give a damn, right? What do you want them to be all smiles as they leave the court? Like, it's emotion, and it's raw emotion, and it's real. And I have no issue with that whatsoever. On the flip side, I don't think that they need to make every camera disappear because it caught something like this. I mean, players are professional enough to realize that in this day and age, especially, whether or not it's a TV camera, you're going to have fans in any open space that might have a cell phone out to capture things like that. And I think that's fine. I don't think Coco Gauff has to be even 1 ounce apologetic for what happened there. I don't have a problem with players smashing rackets on the court if they get to the point where they're fired up and feeling that too, as long as it's not near a ball kid or a spectator or where someone's going to get hurt. But certainly not in a quiet hallway as they're leaving the court heading to the locker room. So I don't think there's any reason to apologize. I also don't think they need to get rid of cameras in certain places. Obviously, the locker room is their safe space, is their area where they should definitely continue to be having privacy for all sorts of reasons. But other than that, I don't have a problem with cameras being around, but I think the reaction should be, measured from pundits or tennis fans who, what do you think? These people are robots? Like, they're emotional, fired up, finely tuned athletes. And for sure, they're going to be pissed off if they get bounced ahead of schedule for what they perceived they were going to accomplish.
Yeah, and look, kudos to her. She said, I had to get this negative energy out. It was better to do this than to be grumpy and mean around my team for the rest of the night. So, hey, great reasoning in my books. briefly on doubles. Gaby Dabrowski, we know she's no longer with Aaron Routliffe, which is unfortunate for all.
I'm still getting over that one. You know, I haven't.
Yeah, we need some time, right?
I don't want to call it a breakup because the two are still good friends, but it's a partnership breakup anyways. And I'm struggling, and I'm struggling with it. But Gaby reunited with her former partner, Luisa Stefani, and they did have success back in the day. They had a great tournament, I think, for their first big event together, making it to the semifinals. They beat a fantastic team in the quarters of Elena Ostapenko and Shea Suwei. That's a heck of a doubles team to beat as well. So I think this really bodes well for the two of them this year as they set out together. And I think they're going to be a threat at every doubles event that they enter together.
I'll give props to Australia, by the way, out of the other 4 slams. They do a full third set. It's no 10-point tiebreak. So it's a full 3-set format, which I kind of appreciate.
As it should be, right?
Yeah.
I leave it up to, I don't want to say chance. You still have to have one team beat the other, but
it's a little more
why shorten it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think...
Doubles is already fast.
Agreed.
Doubles is already fast. It goes by quickly. You don't have to worry about a long, draining 3-setter. And they played a tough 3-setter, by the way, in the semis, losing to Danilina and Krunic 7-6, 3-6, 6-4. But you're right. Good result for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along. Hit the subscribe button below.